Hello, welcome back to Going Walkabout. It's another Flutter episode. Yes, I told you that there will be less Flutter content because I'm focusing on my Swift UI. But then I realized Swift UI and Flutter are very much alike. So I didn't want to hold back on that. A while back I started working on an explore screen. The explore screen is the screen where you can say explore other trips. So trips that people have been publishing, they made them public and they get featured in the app so you can see them. And the current list is just a straight list. It has a few items because I don't have that much content. But in the future, when the content grows, I want to sort of categorize that per continent. I started storing the continent and the countries of the trips, so this is a good time to do that. I started working on it, then I put it a little bit on the side track because I wanted to focus on my Swift UI in iOS. But then I realized Flutter and Swift UI are very much alike. So it is kind of nice to go into depth of how I built this, and then later when I build the same one in Swift UI, we can compare the way it works. So I'll show you first what I mean with the screen. Now we have the simulator running that we know, that we have seen many times before. And if I go here to the explore screen, we see now Europe, Africa, and here there's horizontal scrolling through a few lists. Now depending on how much content, we get more cards. So there's a card per continent, and within the card there's a horizontal scrolling list that goes through the different trips. This is always an infinite number of trips, so it never gets very huge because I can just take, for instance, the last 100 featured trips or something and build on that. So it's never a huge amount of data that needs to be processed. It's comprehensible. So let's go and see how I did that. And that of course starts here with the view. We have an explore view, and that explore view that builds an explore list that is shown here, and the explore list needs a block. As usual, everything in my Flutter application is driven from a business logic object, a block. And a block, that is actually the concentration of your business logic. That's why we call it the block. And it, in case of the Flutter and the block, we use streams, but it is very similar what we see in Swift UI, where you have a view model, but is also separating the view from the business logic. And that is the main objective here, separating the view from the business logic. Now let's go into that business logic block. And in the business logic, I built a helper class, what is called explore continent. So it has a continent code and a list of trips. So this is actually the number of trips in a particular continent. When we continue here with the block, we have the get data function. Now we get the featured trips from the trip repository. That hasn't changed since, well, a long time. It just retrieves the correct trips that are featured. We go through the result here, the result data. And then for every continent in the trip, we add the trip to a continent. And this add trip to a continent function is here. So we check if our data, what we have here in our block, so this is the data object, it's empty when we start, contains the continent. So we actually are building here a map with, as a key, the continent key, and then within that a list of trips. So if it doesn't exist, or if it doesn't contain the key, we add it, and otherwise we add the trip to the existing continent. So this way we loop through all the trips, and we can nicely build a categorized list that is categorized by continent. And once we have this data, then here in the get data function again, we add that to the sink, and well, if there's an error, we add a zero. Once we add it to the sink, it goes back to the explore screen where we actually built the whole screen. We get the stream builder here that is building the stream. Now, it has the data stream, the builder, and then here when we have data, we start with a list view. So, and that list view, that is the snapshot of the data on the continent. So for each continent, we built in the list for each continent an element, that is the card here. And then we add some padding, etc. Well, we set the name of the continent, here, the continent name, that is what you saw on top. Then we put a size box with a fixed height. So that is the box in which we're going to do the horizontal scrolling. And we create another list view, what is separated because we want to have spaces with that. with the scroll direction horizontal. And for the separator, we just do a width of 12. What is the gap between the different elements in the list? Now, then we need to actually build the content of that, what is again a container with a fixed width. So we started with a horizontal bar, actually what is the 160 high, and in a horizontal scrolling list, we're going to fit elements that are 200 wide, and each of them has a column. In the column we put the image with a nice aspect ratio, that's the trip image, we pad it a little bit, then we put the trip name here with a certain piece of text, and below that we put a row, and in that row we put the flags, and on the other side of the row we put the post count. So going back to the simulator, this is the card for continent, then we have the name of the continent, then there's this block is created like here, where we have the 160 high, and in the height of 160 we put this 200 wide image with the correct aspect ratio, the name, the flags, and the post, a separator, and the next one. And because it's a horizontal scrolling list, we can scroll it nicely horizontally the way it works. Now it works, it's very simple to implement, as you see, because that is all there is to it. I'm not happy with the layout because the cards and the horizontal scrolling, it doesn't go together, so I kind of need to redesign that. But it shows you very well that the way we retrieve the data, that's what we saw here in the block, the function from our data repository, as I call it, to get the featured trips. And then we manipulate the data so that it is suitable for the view. So we have the data components, the data model on one side, we retrieve them, then in the block, what is actually the business logic for the particular view, we reshuffle the data so that it is very suitable to render the view efficiently. And then in the view itself, we don't do anything than just getting the data, looping through it, creating the views, and render the whole thing. And I like it more and more. It really forces you to separate the data. So actually your real data, then your view model, the model for your particular view or your business logic object, and your view. And this way it separates it, and each of the individual components is simple and they work together very well. And this is what I find back very well in SwiftUI as well. So in a while, I will also create the same view in SwiftUI. When that is done, then we can also compare the two. So yes, there was another Flutter episode. More will come. I hope you liked this one. And if you like it, please like and subscribe. If you didn't like it, wait for the next video because it might be better for you. Well, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.